Former Blink-182 member and UFO aficionado Tom DeLonge opens up on Blink-182's early days in a new interview. It was a different time in rock music when Blink-182 took over the world in the late 90s and early 2000s. Rock was at its peak, and since then there were a number of Blink-182 copycats that sprung up everywhere, which I'll get to in a moment. By the way, drop a thumbs up on this video, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let's get this channel to 1 million views. It's the best way to support. So, this new interview, let's go over to the computer. This new interview is with JenkinMag.com, and they talk about a bunch of different stuff with Tom. It says, Tom DeLonge on skating, early Blink-182, and fame, talking about the differences in fame back then to now, the differences in the music industry. There's just a lot of differences, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So they say, have you ever skated fully nude? He says, many times. There's this parking garage at a place in the concourse in downtown San Diego. You take the elevator up to the 10th floor, and you just spiral all the way down as fast as you can. Wearing your birthday suit was the way to do it for a while, and he talks about doing that a lot. So they talk about skating for a little bit. You can check that out. And they say, do you think making fun of other subcultures is dead? Because if you go back to that time with Blink-182, one of the things they would do was make fun of boy bands. Nothing was off the table for this band. They were extremely offensive, and basically Tom points out that there's so much of taking offense to things that people say that at this point you're probably not going to see that again from Blink-182 the way things are now. So they go back to say, do you think making fun of other subcultures is dead, like in All the Small Things video when you were mocking boy bands all the time? These days seem like the spirit isn't held up much anymore. And he says, yeah, because people are a bit more woke. People realize some of the things that you said are pretty hateful, depending on who hears it. We are very, very rude to people back then. Everything that Blink did was very XXX on stage. I think Congress labeled us, Eminem, and 2 Live Crew as the 3 most explicit bands of all time. But we were literally just being who we were, a group of skateboarders. That's how we talked. I just directed my first film and I wrote it. It's about skateboarders. And they talk the same way. Everyone's like, shut the F up and F your dad. I did a lot of shit with my brother, like breaking the law outside of that group too. We were bored kids out in the middle of suburbia. We could have hurt somebody physically, or you could have really crushed somebody emotionally who didn't deserve it, but that's part of growing up and maturity. There's a way to be rebellious and anti-authority, but you don't necessarily need to pick on the old guy walking down the road. We were just pissed off kids. Later on in the interview, they say, most people I've talked to with success or fame came from a turbulent upbringing. Have you met any well-adjusted, successful people who come from good families? He says, in my experience, not really. Every artist that I know in rock bands, the ones that I like, are ones that have something to say. If you grow up and you have no pain, no obstacles, and haven't had to deal with anything, what the F do you have to say to get people to rally behind you and resonate with you? That's what makes you want to listen to people, what people have to say, because they've experienced something. Wisdom comes specifically from trials of the human soul. If you have none of that, then you have no wisdom to depart on people. It says, I grew up on Enema of the State with millions of other people, and I'm just trying to imagine, you were 21 then? Yeah, I think, or 23 then? Yeah, I think I was around 23. Did you hook up with a lot of girls at that time? At some point, does that become boring because it's so accessible or unchallenging? He says, no, laughing. At that point, it was really hard to get near us because we had so much security and people just didn't have interactions with us. It's not like we were just hanging out in a club and people were walking in and out of backstage. There were serious relationships, and there was always one of the wives or girlfriends around. Everyone always took their relationships pretty seriously. Do you look at a lot of hot girls and say, that would be fun? Yeah, of course, you're a guy. But at the same time, a lot of them are psychotic or they're younger, and you don't know if they're just trying to wear your skin. Honestly, the fame got so crazy in those days. It's the last thing you want, and they're going to accuse you of something, or they're going to get pregnant and say you're the baby daddy. It's scary. So you're really isolated at that time and not really interacting with fans. Yeah, we were alone. Literally, we showed up to the venue as late as we could, warm up and play, and then walk off stage right into a van, get into the hotel, and we'd have security at the hotel, and there'd be people trying to get us to sign things. even if we just left the stage, they were already there. So they would go straight to our hotel room and hide under our fake name. You're really standoffish with people because everywhere you go, people are staring with you. I couldn't go to malls. I couldn't go to movie theaters. I couldn't go to restaurants or grocery stores. It was insane. So I definitely wasn't hanging out with many people by any means. When you were younger, did you want to be famous? He says, never ever thought of being famous. The only thing I thought I dreamed of being as big as the band NoFX. That was it. They played in front of 1,500 people at night. I thought if I could ever get to that size like they were, that would be the most amazing thing ever. I never thought of fame. I never thought of money. I just wanted to take care of myself and have a decent fan base. So they talk about the fame. I listened to a famous actor say, being famous in the 80s kicked ass. Would you want to be famous now in 2020? He says, yeah, it sucks being famous. Having people stare at you. Imagine you walk into a California pizza kitchen and 100 people are staring and whispering about you, and you're just trying to order a salad. They're all trying to act like they're not looking at you. So every time you look up, one person at the table side-eyes you and then they whisper about it. I have so many times just gotten up and left because I couldn't handle it. I didn't want it. Have you ever worn disguises to get by? Oh yeah, Mark Hoppus and I used to wear disguises at our own shows. He would put on a security guard shirt and a wig and go out and direct cars in the parking lot. I would wear a wig and had weird clothes, and I would just walk around the audience and talk to people. I remember this one time I sat with these girls and I tried to talk to them. They were literally so annoyed and that they turned their backs to me. There are 20,000 people waiting for us to get on stage, and I'm just trying to talk to some hot girls, and they wouldn't even give me the time of day. We did shit like that. Usually when I went out in public, I would wear a hat, keep my head down, or a hoodie where the hood is covering my whole head. A lot of times I would wait for the car until someone went in and made sure the coast was clear. I would race into like a movie theater or whatever it was. It still never worked. They always found out I was there. Those days were really difficult. It's not like that anymore because, but those days were crazy. And they say, are you happier now that those days are behind you? He says, I'm way happier now. You can't live your life normally. I got things I need to do. And then they asked about the copycat bands. He says, I was so annoyed only because I felt like they could do better, but we all steal things that we're influenced by, so it's definitely a flattering thing. What I was annoyed by is that I didn't see a progression in music. To be exactly like somebody else doesn't do much. Granted, I've been exactly like somebody before too, and I learned to grow out of it and didn't make those mistakes here and there. So it's not like I'm removed from that. I think that every artist does that at some point. We also don't own pop punk we stole from other bands. I can't pretend that we didn't do the same thing, but we definitely gave it our own spin. I gotta say, it's pretty interesting to see Tom DeLonge talking about Blink-182 so frequently. It's hard to imagine that he won't return to the group at some time. John Frusciante returned to Red Hot Chili Peppers, and we've seen numerous comebacks from other artists as well. Hard to imagine that this doesn't happen in a year where System of a Down just released 2 more songs. If you're hoping that Tom DeLonge returns to Blink-182, I wouldn't sit around waiting. It could be years from now, but I definitely feel pretty confident that it's going to happen. Anyways, thanks for joining us at Rockfeed. Hit that sub button if you haven't already, and let's get to 1 million subscribers. We'll see you all very soon. Maybe, just maybe, you might enjoy one of these clips. Join me on Instagram and Spotify for news you may not find here. And if you really want to do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support.